morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, an introduction to the Luxembourg startup ecosystem. I am going to just get the slides up and we can make a start. So my name's Neil Cocker and I'm your host today. Let me just give you a quick introduction before we kick off. I'm conscious that for many people on the call today, and there was about 100 who registered, so we have quite a big group in the webinar today. Many of you may be quite unfamiliar with the term startup ecosystem, or you might know a little bit about it, but it's helpful, of course, to frame it before we kick off and jump into the topic. So this is a visual that you see on screen that I quite like, and it's from Startup Commons, and it's a good one-page summary of what a startup ecosystem is. So in simple terms, you start on the left where you have ideas that lead to intellectual property. You have talented individuals who can help those ideas come to life. You move through the middle section where you have startups that are created. There's the support organizations that wrap around those startups. There's funding bodies, there's government bodies. There's that whole ecosystem that wraps around that area. And then this moves on to, you could say, commercialization, productization. Startups become big companies, they're acquired by big companies. So this is the whole end-to-end structure. And an ecosystem has to be planned, but also there's also a kind of intangible aspect as well, where you need a bit of magic as well that can't be planned. And Luxembourg in the last few years, the ecosystem has grown really rapidly. So we'll tell you a bit more about the history of the Luxembourg ecosystem, and we'll talk to 3 of the main players today. And here is our lineup of speakers. Now we'll give each of them a chance to introduce themselves when it comes to their turn. But just quickly, from left to right, we have Stefan Berend, who leads the Startup Acceleration Programs at LuxInnovation. We have Philip Linster, CEO at House of Startups. We have Diego Di Biasio from Technopo, CEO. And we have CEO of Tomorrow Street, Kenny Graham. And myself, I also work at Tomorrow Street, and I'm wearing 2 hats today because I'm also a volunteer at the British Chamber of Commerce. Our agenda is firstly some housekeeping rules. So you attendees, as you've probably noticed, your microphones are muted, your cameras are off, so it will stay like that throughout the webinar. You will see there's a little Q&A icon down in your toolbar, so please use that, ask questions as we go. And when we move to the Q&A section at the end, I will read out your questions and facilitate the Q&A. And finally, no tech webinar would be complete without a Steve Jobs quote. So time is always very important to all of us. So we appreciate you've taken time out of your busy days today. So I will be quite ruthless with the timekeeping. And often all of us who work in the startup world, we're very tough with startups in pitch competitions, for example. So I will be equally tough on the speakers today with their timings, which, as you see on this agenda slide, you can see we have approximately 7 minutes for each of the guys today. So the first 2/3 approximately, we will have presentations about these various players in the ecosystem. And then the last 20 minutes or so, we will have our open discussion, our Q&A. Super. Okay, so I think with that, I will pass over to Stefan. Stefan.
Great. Thank you very much, Neil, for the kind introduction. And thank you also to the British Chamber of Commerce for Luxembourg for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you today. As mentioned, I'm in charge for the Startup Acceleration Unit within LuxInnovation. We cover a few support tools and programs that are dedicated to support early stage entrepreneurs in its first years of development, but also for the scale up in the next steps to go. Today, I'd like to introduce you to the startup ecosystem in Luxembourg. Neil, if you don't mind, you could jump to the next slide. But where's Luxembourg coming from? For the ones who are not familiar with that, in in the 1900s, actually, there in Luxembourg was very much driven by a steel industry, and more actually this drifted to this global financial center that is still relevant and a cornerstone in Luxembourg as of today. The government, the ministries, they all understand that diversification is definitely key, and that data is of utmost importance for future competitiveness of the company. And in that century and more actually in the recent years, there was a huge invest in knowledge-based applications and solutions, and to support the companies, but also startups specifically to have a robust and competitive economy for the future. Next slide, please. As you can see here, there's different key sectors that you can find in Luxembourg with really global partners and large enterprises that complete a strong ecosystem, be it in industrial companies, but also on the ICT side. Luxembourg is also known as a logistics hub. As you can see, there's very well-known actors mentioned, and of course also the financial center is of key relevance here in Luxembourg. Not to mention, of course, the EU institutions that are here as well. And together, there's this is a composition to have an ideal testbed also for innovators and entrepreneurs, so that they can test and maybe leverage these corporates and institutions to test their products, to contribute to their roadmaps in order to be together more and more successful. So this open innovation concept is more and more a key ingredient, I think, to be successful on all angles. Next slide, please. So what is the startup ecosystem actually in Luxembourg? It's 400 startups that you can find here in many different sectors and niches, be it the ICT and fintechs and health tech space, the clean tech. In the cybersecurity, there's a huge momentum coming up at the moment. Space is a key sector in Luxembourg as well. You've seen SES Astra on one of the previous slides. So there's already also a very long history existent on that side. On the incubation and acceleration side, I'll dig a bit deeper in that on the next slide as well. But of course, a key ingredient is also financing. What is available to support strong roadmaps of companies. I will also introduce this to you in a few seconds. I was long hesitant if I should keep this events section there, but luckily it seems like that there's less and less sanitary restrictions. Fingers crossed that it stays like this, and that also events will have a crucial role again in the future. Next slide, please. And indeed, as you can see here, there's institutional supporters and actors in the ecosystem on the top left, be it the House of Entrepreneurship, the one-stop shop actually to open a company, how to administratively structure all these kind of things in order to efficiently be able to operate your business. LuxInnovation has been mentioned, but also the House of Startups. You're gonna hear Philip later on to talk about this, and Yoko. There's a lot of incubators and accelerators, be it on the private side, be it more publicly related cases. Also Technopo, Diego is going to talk to you in a second. But there's also a few others to mention, like Paul Wirt Incube, very much focused on tech, industrial applications, which is highly interesting to mention as well. And there's, of course, a few others, let's say also the House of Bioware, for example, in a strategically relevant sector for the country. There's a lot of corporate programs popping up recently. A few of them have a much longer history, but together this is really a strong driving force for innovation and research and development projects in Luxembourg as well. There's a few startups programs, of course, on Fit for Start. That's something I'd like to introduce to you in a few seconds as well. And of course, there's a lot of factors around networking and use business opportunities that should arrive out of that, and cornerstone events, such as, for example, Arch Summit, to mention, which is a key visibility event, I guess, for our friends from Tomorrow Street. Next slide, please. I mentioned funding. Yes, of course. There's a few support schemes coming from the Ministry of Economy, be it the Young Innovative Enterprise or R&D related aids, but there's also SNCI, state-owned bank, that provides loans to foster investment in innovation to corporates and also large enterprises. There's an early stage tech fund, the Digital Tech Fund, managed and operated by Export Capital. You can see there, there's a few promising startups. It's completely sector agnostic, as you can see there. NextK Tech automates operations in the fund tech industry, Passport, an open source password manager, Visata, additive manufacturing. So very much industry driven, and of course also to mention Luxembourg Future Fund, which is backed by SNCI and the European Investment Fund, amongst others. Next slide, please. A few words to Fit for Start. It's one of the flagship acceleration programs, and it's managed by LuxInnovation. It supports early stage entrepreneurs in 2 editions per year, and we support up to 35 startups in these 2 editions. So it's covering ICT related startups, it's covering space related startups, and also health tech. You can see this is, of course, very well fitting in the overall picture of what the government and the country tries to achieve for the future in building greater substance and great talent around these key sectors for the future. It's a program that is very much supported also by our partners like the Technopo, partner from day one, and also the Luxembourg City Incubator is with us since 2018 already. So thank you for that, because also the incubation support and their networks are also key ingredients to make it a successful program. Last but not least, the jury. It's highly relevant, actually, for the entrepreneurs. The jury is composed of serial entrepreneurs, VCs, angel investors, industry experts, and this is something that is highly appreciated, not just from us, but of course, the startups themselves as well. Last but not least, up to 150K in equity funding, of course, per startup. Next slide, please. That's it from my side. Neil, thank you very much.
Thanks, Stefan. Bang on time. Now we'll introduce Philip from the House of Startups. Philip, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you also very much, Stefan, for the presentation of the ecosystem, which is really, really important for, I think, why also the House of Startups exists now, because the ecosystem is really flourishing. So my name is Philipp Linster. I'm the CEO of the House of Startups, which I represent now in the few upcoming slides, but a very interesting project. So if you could go to the next slide, Neil. We have been set up in 2017, and we really opened doors on the 1st of June 2018. So this week we celebrated our 3rd anniversary. So really, we consider ourselves a little bit startup because we are quite young. So we're really there to support and to develop the startup ecosystem here in the country. So that's really one of our main missions. We talk about to federate between the players. You will see with our community inside the House of Startups, but also with the community all around the country. It's very important that we bring together these players to collaborate and to help the startups at the end of the day. It's about promoting, so to getting startups and people to the ecosystem by launching their own companies, by having their own projects, or by joining, by just working in the incubators, by working for one of the startups. So also this promotion also at the education level, at the Luxembourgish level. So we have really, really close collaborations with all different ministries in the country, and it's all about support. I think startups at the beginning, they need support to grow, to scale, and there are so many players here. Stefan mentioned a few of them, and it's really, we have really nice ecosystem for a small country. We just there to help you at the end of the day. So we really belong to the Chamber of Commerce. So we're not a private institution. So we are financed by the companies here in Luxembourg. So we want to give back this to the economy. And especially we are there to help grow and flourish the innovation part of the economy here in Luxembourg. This is by not only the startups itself, this is very important too, but as Stefan mentioned it, if the slide over with LuxInnovation, it's also the big companies to help them on their innovation quest, open innovation quest inside. So also the bigger and established companies, but also the startups themselves. If you could go to the next slide, Neil. So we have two big missions. One of the big missions, of course, is the building itself. So we are building of 6,000 square meter really in the heart of the city of Luxembourg, next to the central station, if you have never been here, because the crisis, of course, there has been less events up to now, but we consider September maybe that smaller events could again take place. So that's the good news about maybe there's an end of the tunnel for this pandemic. We consider ourselves a campus of innovation. Why? Because the House of Startups is not an incubator itself. We are bringing together different incubators and accelerators here at the House of Startups. That's really important to understand, and that really illustrates our role to federate all the different key players which can support startups here in Luxembourg. So we have 4 different players here inside the building which take over the space, and they rent it out to the different startups we have. To give you an idea, we have around 130 to 140 startups inside the building. So there's a huge community of over a lot of different sectors. So who are these 4 different players? So first of all, we have the Luxembourg City Incubator. This is an incubator which belongs to us, to the Chamber of Commerce, because besides having the House of Startups, we also wanted to have our incubator. And we do this together in a partnership with the city of Luxembourg, because we have our building in the city of Luxembourg. They wanted to partner with us, which is great news. This also explains why the Luxembourg City Incubator focuses on the sectors which are important for them. We talk about environment, tourism, smart city, commerce, constructions, logistics, you name it. But we also have now in the last 3 years also developed some key competences in everything what's education and also clean tech. We also have the LOFT, the Luxembourg House of Financial Technology, which is belonging to the Ministry of Finance. But you know, Luxembourg Financial Center, quite important. So fintech is really, really big. So if you have considering having a fintech, this is the key partner. We have the Le Village by the Crédit Agricole, the big French group. They help their French startups accelerate to Luxembourg, but also vice versa. They help now Luxembourgish startups to accelerate to French, and French tech is quite important. So it's really nice to have them here. And the last one of these 4, it's the ICFA. It's the International Climate Finance Accelerator, which helps build and grow funds in the climate finance. So this is community. So if you want to build up a startup, I think House of Startups could be a possible place for you. Next slide, Neil. So we are not only building and placing incubators here and to be nice, but we also build this community. I think this is the greatest thing about the House of Startups, that you have such a diversified community coming together and working together. And we bring our part in it by organizing community events. This is very simple, from organizing big breakfasts over 100 people, before COVID, of course, but this comes again. Lunch and learns, after work sessions, but also with something to learn for our startups, conferences, hackathons, international pitching competitions. I think all these events are happening at the House of Startups. Even external incubators can come here and help them. So that's really great about this building, that you do not only meet people which are working here, you also meet other incubators, other startups which are not incubated at the House of Startups. So networking is the biggest place which I think you can get in Luxembourg. And coming to the next and last slide is that we also have co-organized a lot of initiatives last year, most of them digital, of course. Like we had the Hack the Crisis to fight the COVID-19 pandemic with innovative solutions. You had the ministry and LuxInnovation, and we partnered with them with the startup versus COVID-19 competition. And again, there's World Cup, there's Game of Code, Startup Weekend, which has been launched by Technopo. These initiatives are very important to promote the ecosystem. And as a House of Startups, we really are there to promote it and to organize it and to get as many people to our ecosystem and to help and grow the startup. So I hope it gives you in a nutshell a clear view, and I give it back to Neil.
Thank you very much, Philip. Great presentation and bang on time. We will now move down to Belval. Over to you, Diego.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you also, Rebecca, for the invitation, and hello, everybody. Yes, down to the south of the country. I will try actually to explain a little bit more what the specificities are of Technopo as a business incubator. You have seen in Stefan's and in the presentations so far that there are several incubators in Luxembourg. So what makes us different from the others? I think the first element to say is that we try to support creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship since over 20 years. So we have been set up in 1998 within a public research center. And then we span out of that research center in 2012 to become a limited company, which is one of the first specific structure actually that made it also quite different in the European landscape. There had been some very intense interest from foreign incubators also to see how this could work as a limited company. I think we shared a lot of expertise also in that over the last years. We have two shareholders, the Ministry of the Economy on one side, and then the SNCI, which has also been mentioned by Stefan in the introduction, as two shareholders of the initiative. So today we, in 2012, when we spun out of the research center, we also merged with another initiative from the Ministry of the Economy. And today we actually manage around 16,000 square meter of facilities, which is divided into a pure office space like most of the incubators have. But the other aspect that we can cover is actually everything which is related to industrial applications, either in environmental technologies, material science, or even space if that's required. So these are industrial halls that are put at disposal to these entrepreneurs who need actually to do production or even assembly. We are a generic incubator, which means that we are not actually focusing on one specific technology. So we have companies in ICT, software, space, environment, you name it actually. So here, this slide is actually just to stress one element that we try to put forward on a regular basis. A typical incubator is actually a mix between three main elements. It's the support services to coach the startups, the networks that it could build over its existence, and also from the expert that he involves. And then the third pillar is actually the infrastructure. So we see us a little bit more than a simple incubator. We also have this function of laboratory to test new concepts for the ecosystem. Here I will just name a few ones that we launched in the past. So we were the first one who brought the hackathons to Luxembourg in 2012. We had a co-working space from 2012 to 2019. We had a digital fabrication laboratory also, which was end of 2019 transferred to the Lycée des Arts et Métiers. At that moment, it was by far the most well-equipped fab lab of the greater region. And we tested concepts like a living lab in a cross-country setup, and also the digital experience studio for entrepreneurs who are more active in digital content creation. And another aspect which is also very important for us, which is also not usually present within incubators, is that we can support foreign corporates to establish R&D facilities in Luxembourg. So we have set up a specific soft landing program for these corporates to evaluate if Luxembourg is really the right place for them to set up the initiatives. And we host today two initiatives like, or two corporates like Thales Alenia Space and Guala Closures, which is one of the biggest manufacturers of aluminum caps for the bottle industry. Next slide, Neil. In terms now of pure incubation program, we have two main sub-programs. So the pre-commercial program, which is really there for validating a proof of concept or a business case. It's 4 months, it's free of charge for the entrepreneur, and it ends with an evaluation panel to approve the next stage, which is then submitted to our board of directors for official approval. So the official incubation program compared to the initial pre-commercial program is fee-based. The first one is free of charge. And it's basically our work changes in terms of validating concepts to really helping them implement the plans that they had set up in the first stage. For us, the first program is not just a support program for the entrepreneur, it also became with the years a selection program to select the companies that make most sense for our own criteria. Next slide. Some of our success stories here, I will not go in details on all of them. We have here just to show some of the diversity that you find in the hosted companies. You have Talkwalker, which is quite known in the ecosystem. There are more than 430 people right now, and they are providing a solution for social listening platforms. So what is said about a brand and how a brand is positioned on the market. You have OAT, which is today a company of 120 people and more, which has a platform for doing online assessments. You have RCDEF, which is more in the IT security world, or LuxScan, which is one of the first success stories of the incubator, which develops and sells actually a scanning system for the wood industry. So it's, you see here, it's quite diverse, and it's quite interesting also to try to find synergies between the different sectors and segments. Today, we have, out of the 37 companies we host, there is a big part which is focused on space application, roughly 25%. So that's a trend that we see developing more and more. And one last thing that I wanted to mention to make the link also with the presentation of Kenny, for the scale-ups, we had the chance and the opportunity to make this joint venture with Tomorrow Street, with Vodafone, the joint venture called Tomorrow Street. And I think Kenny will make a better presentation of the whole initiative than me. So thank you. Neil, back to you.
Thank you, Diego. Bang on time once again, so everyone's doing really well today. The last presentation before we move to the Q&A is from Kenny Graham, CEO of Tomorrow Street. Kenny, take it away.
Thank you, Neil. And Diego, thanks for the pressure to do a better presentation here now straight away, so thank you for that. Well, listen, thank you everyone for joining. It really is a pleasure to be able to talk about the startup scale-up ecosystem that myself and the previous speakers are all very proud of. So thanks for joining us today. Tomorrow Street, as Diego mentioned, is a joint venture between Technopo and Vodafone Procurement Company, which is based here in Luxembourg. And Tomorrow Street was formed in 2017. And it provides a connection between Vodafone Group and the Luxembourg tech ecosystem. Now, our focus is, and Diego sort of touched on it a moment, is more on the scale up. So late stage startups and scale up. So companies that have a proven product already and are ready to go global. And we do that through the Vodafone global ecosystem. Next slide, please, Neil. If I just talk about our core objectives. So for Vodafone, it's really about reaching in to the startup scale up ecosystems and finding some great young companies that have innovative technologies that are going to fit the strategic needs of Vodafone. Now, for large corporates, it can often be difficult. It can be challenging to work with young companies and really make a success of them. So Vodafone, as you can imagine, as a successful global company, has many deep and successful relationships with suppliers, strategic suppliers around the world, but it can be difficult with young companies. But what we now have is a model where we can access great ecosystems with great companies and a people, process and sponsorship to help those companies not just survive in a large company like Vodafone, but thrive and become strategic partners of the future. For Luxembourg, our mission is to attract great companies to the country, to create new technology opportunities, to create new technology roles and be a part of the ecosystem here. Wherever possible, we're actually looking to secure those companies to set up their European headquarters here in Luxembourg, and we've managed to do that with a couple of our partners. And for the scale-ups, our core objective is to help them be a global success story, bring them into our ecosystem, help them scale, help them, you know, realize the true value, the true potential that they could offer out there into the world. Next slide, please. So we have a simple process, scout, validate, three-step process, scout, validate, scale. I won't talk about that in this slide. What I wanted to highlight is we're really fortunate that we have such a strong global playground to work in. So for those of you not familiar with Vodafone, Vodafone has 24 countries around the world with mobile and or fixed networks. Also partner markets around the world, 43 partner markets that have networks. And Vodafone Business, and maybe a lot of people may be not aware that Vodafone Business actually operates right across the globe and accounts for about 30% of Vodafone's global revenue. So we're very fortunate that we get to play in such a strong ecosystem, and therefore with the companies that we partner with, that's a potential addressable market that we can offer to them to scale. Next slide, please. I won't go into the detail of our process, but it's something that's taken a bit of time to really tune, and we think we've got it to the right place now. And Neil, who's running the show today, actually responsible for the scouting element of this. But I just really wanted to highlight some of the things that are really important for a scale-up accelerator to be successful. The first on the scouting side of things is you've got to have a really strong global ecosystem. If you want to find the best companies, you've got to have the ecosystem around you that understands what you're looking for and what your model looks like, so you can tap into those great companies. The second thing is you really need to understand, you know, the end customer, if you like, or the stakeholders in our case that we work with in Vodafone, to understand their needs so we can match those exciting companies with the needs of Vodafone. On the validation side, it's you know, so important to do that very thorough validation, just to make sure that you really are partnering with a company that you know are very confident that you can make successful with you. So, you know, we often talk about the hard and the soft factors that we look at. The hard factors being, is our technology real? Does it really work? Is it scalable? Do they have the financial stability and the business model to be successful in the future? And then as the soft factors is about the culture and their values. You know, we need to make sure that their values gel well with Vodafone's values and the values here in Luxembourg as well. So very important to make sure you really do the due diligence before you partner with a company. And just to give you some numbers, we typically look at 600 companies a year, and we do a deep dive on 50. And we partner with 8 companies, which I'll talk about in a moment. And that partnership, once you do partner with a young company, and to be successful, you need to be prepared to start working night and day to support their growth, just like the scale-ups and the startups do. You're doing everything we can. We connect them around our ecosystem. We nudge opportunities forward. Once they get the opportunities, we become sort of operational support as well to smooth the way. I go back to what I said earlier. It's about helping young companies not just survive in a large corporate, but really, really thrive. Next slide, Neil. Yeah, I'm delighted to say that, you know, we have 8 companies, as I touched on earlier, all of which are bedding into really strategically important areas for Vodafone. That might be helping digital transformation either within Vodafone or with Vodafone's customers, also solutions which are creating new revenue based on Vodafone's connectivity layer, but also solutions which are creating completely new revenue streams as well. So we're really proud of where we are today and what we do, and I think the scale up model is working. We're delighted. We've got a number of people who are waiting to jump on a plane as soon as they can to join us here in Luxembourg as well, and start contributing to the ecosystem here, which I said earlier, we're all very proud of as it continues to grow. So thank you for listening. That was all from me. Neil, hopefully I was on time.
Yes, Kenny, bang on time. Let me stop sharing. Oh, there's my alarm, you see. Okay, perfect. So we're going to jump over to the Q&A section now of today's webinar. So I'll just ask Diego Stefan to return to video view. Perfect. I'm just going to take a look at the questions. Okay, so question to all from Mary. Are we seeing more and better startups that originate in Luxembourg? I know the ecosystem cast a wide net in the beginning and caught a lot of really good international startups, but how much has this raised the level of the Luxembourgish origin startups? So maybe it's a good one to start with, perhaps Philip or Stefan.
Yeah, maybe I can start. So I think it's important. You could maybe draw a line to professional sports. Like if you want to grow a good professional team, I think you need to get professional people in, like good players, good coaches to form like the people from here. What's a good startup? But it helps, of course, but you shouldn't forget that I think Diego mentioned it. You had TalkWalker. There are over 400 people now. They started in 2008 in the Technopo, even before we said as a country that we wanted to be a startup nation. So we had good Luxembourgish startups even before we talked about it. So that's really great stuff. But I think it's a good mix. I think the good mix is very important. But you need success stories to promote them. I think Luxembourg is doing this right now to get these young people to start startups, and if you have more startups, of course, you get better startups, and also the ecosystem, it goes with it. So we develop the ecosystem with the new startups coming. I think we have an initiative every year being created. So the startup ecosystem gets better, the startups get better. And you should never forget that Luxembourg is very special because we have half working in the population. So half of them are Luxembourgish, half of them are not. Even during the day, the working population is 75% is not Luxembourgish. So it's logical that not all startups are not Luxembourgish because we are not so many. So, but I think people living here, they want to have impact today. So they want to create startups, find innovative and sustainable solutions. So I think having a good mix is very important for an innovative ecosystem.
Yeah, I can.
Oh, sorry, Stefan.
Kenny, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to share a really nice success story, which I think helps answer this question. So there were 2 individuals that work for Vodafone procurement company and joined Tomorrow Street. They got a taste. They got it for the startup world and actually created their own startup, No Big Idea. And recently, Stefan, I think, just won the Fit for Start and won funding. It's an amazing story. They had no intention when, a couple of years ago to create their own business. And now they are a Luxembourg originated startup. So a real nice story there. Sorry, Stefan. Maybe you're going to say the same thing.
Almost. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Indeed, there's what I tend to say is that the quality of startups significantly increased over time in the last couple of years, let's say 5 years. There's much more professionalism, much more support in the ecosystem. And I don't talk about funding support, but also about expertise involved everywhere. So the quality is significantly increased. On that side, there's a good example with this just mentioned company, no big deal. They are now backed by Fit for Start also. Huge traction already. There's definitely a few more on that side. And of course, to complement what Philip just said, attracting foreign direct investment, attracting foreign investors and startups to make the ecosystem even bigger and more flourishing, I think that is still also a key ingredient to then have a strong ecosystem with great success stories coming out of it.
Thanks, Stefan. It's a really interesting topic. I'll move on to the next question from Daniel. This is a good question. If I am a startup and looking for the best fit incubator, how does our panel of experts suggest I go about prioritizing which incubator will be the best fit for my business? So maybe Diego, we've not heard from Diego yet. So Diego, if you could address that one.
Yeah, I think this question is interesting because it. I think you as an entrepreneur need also to do some kind of homework in that sense. So analyze what type of support of companies the different incubators support. To give you an example, when LOFT was created, which is the Luxembourg House of Financial Technologies, we very quickly came to the conclusion that for us as Technopo, supporting fintech companies would probably not be relevant anymore. So since then, we have accepted almost non-fintech company in our incubator because we refer them back to LOFT for supporting them in that area. And I think within the House of Startup, there are other fintech-related incubators that could also play a role. The best fit is indeed something that comes up with a two-way analysis. So the entrepreneur needs to do the homework, like I said, but then it's also the incubator who should do the work by saying, okay, can we support the company? Do we have the right networks to do it or not? And if they don't feel comfortable, I think they should by themselves indicate to the entrepreneur to go to some other partners that might be better structured to support them. And this is very important because at the end, it's about the credibility of the incubation structure itself, because you don't want to have entrepreneurs that you can't support and that they might end up by not being satisfied with your offering as such. So I think it's a two-way analysis.
Good answer, Diego. I guess Stefan, Philip, you have some thoughts?
From our perspective, we are kind of neutral more way in that sense, but we of course try to give a few thoughts to the entrepreneur's hands in order to make a qualified assessment on that. But it's at the end really like Diego said, but a key ingredient in that ecosystem is, even if you would talk to Diego maybe as a first point of contact, as he just said, he would actually give you a frank answer to say, maybe you are not perfectly tailored to Technopo, but please reach out to our colleagues from another incubator. And this is, I think, really a key factor for the ecosystem.
I might use an example to be concrete. We had been contacted years ago by Leco Labs, which is doing this kind of innovative wood construction for housing and residence. And at that moment, we were not really sure how to be able to support them in a real proper way. So we referred them back to NeoBuild, which is actually dedicated to the construction industry. They did all the tests and validated all the strengths of the structures, etc., in the facilities of NeoBuild. And then when they needed actually to have a production site for launching the production and the first housing structures, they came back to Technopo with the industrial halls that we have in Fürth. So this shows also how the ecosystem can work nicely together between the different support organizations.
Thanks, Diego.
Maybe to complete what Diego and Stefan said, if now you're considering launching a startup or having a business, so I think, and you have no idea what is the ecosystem about and who is there as an incubator. So that Diego said you should do your homework. And I think there are two main addresses to find out about the ecosystem, about which incubator exists. So there's, of course, the team of Stefan at LuxInnovation. So you have the startup acceleration team. like Stefan said, they are neutral, so they can tell you all about the different incubators they existing in Luxembourg, so could help you. And the other structure, which was also mentioned in the presentation by Stefan, is the House of Entrepreneurship of the Chamber of Commerce. They mainly help you in all the setting up process, but they also tell you about the different incubator programs and structures which exist. So if you have really no idea at all, then these are two addresses to get all the information. Of course, afterwards, it's your shot. You have to go there, you have to talk to people, which is the structure which can help you the most. But from there, you can really start your business.
Is for foreigners or outsiders in that sense, if I may, easy way to get a flavor for the ecosystem, follow, for example, Startup Luxembourg on LinkedIn. These kind of things. You get a lot of information, a lot of content on that site, and definitely also there are more activities online to educate yourself a bit about the ecosystem.
Thank you, Stefan. And we have a few questions coming in. The next one is for Kenny specifically. We are a startup, we're ready to go to market, no revenues now, would like to work with Vodafone. Can we apply?
So, always interested to hear about companies with new products. What I would say is typically what happens when we go to our Vodafone colleagues and we say there's this great tech and they say that looks wonderful. The next question is how many people do they have? And if there's only very few people, they get a little bit nervous about moving forward, because obviously if you're going to take a product and launch it globally, there needs to be strong support network there. But in this sort of example, what we'd probably do is certainly have a discussion. If it's a little bit early for our model, then we typically normally talk to Diego and see if Diego's team might be able to be maybe a better support in the stage that you're at. But maybe we try and find some sponsorship from within the Vodafone ecosystem. So yeah, happy to hear from you. It might be that we take advantage of one of the other incubators, accelerators who are at the stage that you're at. And then Neil, as looking after scouting, often refers to his youth academy, and that's no disrespect at all, but it's thinking, you give the football analogy, right, Neil, which is about those that look really promising. Need that little bit of coaching at that earlier stage until ready to sort of have the support mechanisms in place to go global. But be happy to hear from you. Neil, sorry, did you want to add anything to that? Because it's your every day.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. We're all pretty active on social media, right? And I get probably 3-4 messages every day on LinkedIn, just from startups that are curious to connect. So we always, I think we all have a duty and a responsibility to startups to, give advice where we can. So we'll always endeavour to reply to any emails that come in, even though we do get deluged quite often, depending on the time of year. So please get in touch, and we'd be happy to give you some feedback and some thoughts in terms of timing and in terms of what could be right for yourselves. Great, we have some really good questions. Giri is asking, curious about Luxembourg versus other hubs like Berlin or London. Are there any particular qualities that make a startup more likely to succeed in Luxembourg than other places? And that's beyond qualities that are attractive in other hubs. So industry, target market, etc. Who would like to take that one? That's a good one.
I can start just from the experience that we have. I mean, obviously we've brought a number of companies here already. Two things stand out. One is the connectivity. Small country, very connected. It doesn't take many phone calls. In fact, it can often take one phone call to find the way to someone very senior who might be able to help a company take the next step and get the support they need. So I think there's that connectivity and that closer community. And then secondly, it's also about the partnerships you form. So in our case, we have the link to Vodafone. There's other strong companies here, corporates that might be a great partner for a startup as well. So I think it's about the connectivity and it's about the partnerships that can be formed in this country. We obviously, without getting political, we've got a couple of companies from the UK which are attracted to our model. It gives them a home in Europe as well. that's my starter on that question. So I'll let one of the others jump in. I'm sure can add.
Jump in on that. I can totally relate to this. That's definitely outstanding for Luxembourg and maybe for a small country in general. But in addition to that, even how we try to position Luxembourg as a startup ecosystem, it's a test bed for your products. We never understand Luxembourg in that sense as a market. It's just too small for that. But you have access to global groups, and with Vodafone, we have the perfect example here. You can scale globally from day one from Luxembourg. So that is definitely the key ingredients. I'm not sure if everyone in Berlin speaks 4 languages in that sense. So access to talent and all these kind of things definitely could also make a difference in assessing the right location for your startup.
Yeah,
maybe if you look at the part industry, or is it related to a specific industry, it's also a matter of I think the whole framework that you can find in Luxembourg in terms of government support and on specific industrial segments. So if I take now the example of space, it's clear that it's perhaps not an element that guarantees the success, but it's definitely an environment that has been created over the last years around space technologies and businesses, which is probably easier than to navigate through than in Germany or in France or in other geographical areas. So to give you also an example from the annual applications that we get, 50% are resident applications and 38% are international application. And the rest is from the greater region, which is sometimes also you could see as more local applications, but it's really the international applications have grown really strongly over the last years. And part of it is also in sectors where the government is actually also pushing some huge investments.
Yeah, maybe to complete, in Luxembourg, you should not forget that we have 3 official languages, so which is Luxembourgish, but also French and German, and English being the main business language. So I think you have 4 languages which are widely spoken in Luxembourg. So in comparison to now Paris or Berlin, so of course, when you are in the cities, you have a huge access to the German or French market. But in Luxembourg, what is really, like Stefan said, it's a test bed, and then you have to scale, you have to go international. You cannot satisfy with Luxembourgish market, but you can go, so we have 3 neighboring countries, you can go very fast into France, Germany, and Belgium. And again, we have the Benelux, so the Netherlands are not far away. So we are in the center of Europe. So if you want to grow big and to scale, yeah, Luxembourg is the place. You test the product because we are a renowned economy. We are very stable politically and economically, and it's very safe to start a business here. And then, yeah, then you grow, you go international. And I think that's our main force as a small country.
Thanks, Philip. I'm just conscious of we're running out of time. We've got some other questions coming in. So from Wojtek, when I'm establishing an investment fund in Luxembourg, is there any starting support for it?
I could start on that. Investment funds as such, so if you're looking for investors, so LPs in that sense, probably the people here on the panel and the institutions are not the right actors in that sense. What we could do is the facilitation, so to guide you to potential investors in that sense, but not as an active investor as such. There's an entire industry in Luxembourg, of course. To set up the fund here in Luxembourg, I think it's perfectly suited for that. That is confirmed by the entire industry, but not for the investor side. On the GP side, for managing it or how to put the governance around, we can definitely identify actors from a mutual perspective on that. Maybe
have a look at the Luxembourg for Finance website. It's less the panel here, events investment funds is important in Luxembourg, but maybe Luxembourg for finance.
Good idea, Philip. Just a couple of minutes left, so we'll quickly have a few closing words to say. So Alex is asking about, from a talent perspective, if one wants to work for a startup or scale up, is there one central team who assists the startups with finding talent, or is it a case of contacting each one separately? I can maybe just add, in Silicon Luxembourg, which is the tech magazine, they have a jobs page every week. So if you sign up for the Silicon Luxembourg newsletter, there's usually 7 or 8 jobs every week, so that it's quite a good source for posts, open posts in Luxembourg. I don't know if anyone else wants to quickly add anything there on talent.
Yeah, actually, what is easier perhaps than contacting each company individually, you can also reach out to the incubator managers or the teams of the incubators. That can, we regularly get CVs and then we forward them to the companies that we think might be interested. And then you never know, sometimes positions are not official or not yet opened, and then you can create actually a link with the company and they can come back to you later on.
Thanks, Diego. And there are a couple of other questions. I don't think we're going to have time, unfortunately. Jimmy is asking about incentives for startups in the biomedical area. I don't know if Philip or Stefan, do you know of any contacts, biomedical related startups that Jimmy could reach out to?
We can definitely look into this as soon as you don't hesitate to reach out. Long story short, we can connect you on that side to potential incubation space, research sites, partners. Fit for Starters having a healthy vertical too. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stefan. I think that's all we have time for, unfortunately, today. If you give me a second, I'm just going to present one last slide on about the British Chamber of Commerce. Let me just quickly scroll through. So, well, firstly, thank you to our speakers today. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks, Diego. Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Stefan. The British Chamber of Commerce is running a regular series of events. So let me just get on the right slide. So the next 2 events just to look out for, Sustainable Business event, which is on 16th of June. And then 1st of July, online wine tasting, which, you know, it's almost lunchtime on a Friday. So I guess some of you are starting to think about maybe a glass of wine or something stronger. So, so look out for that one on the 1st of July. Just to close, say thank you very much for the British Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to bring everyone together today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar, and please feel free to reach out to us on social media if you'd like to find out more. So thanks again to everyone, and all the best for the weekend.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, goodbye. Ciao.